the reason I went to Masterson is object relations had my answer. And this is the answer. And forgive the jargon. If a person has whole object relations on object constancy, they do not qualify for any form of personality disorder diagnosis. They are not borderline, narcissistic, or schizoid. They may have every trait. They may be unpleasant as all hell. They may be abusers. They may be inflexible. You may hate them, but they don't have a personality disorder.
Is that like sort of standard across the board then? If you have whole object relations, then it's kind of impossible to be diagnosed with a personality disorder.
By an object relations theorist.
By an object relations theorist.
That's right. That's where the line is. Now, Otto Kernberg is an object relations theorist, very well known, very complicated to understand, I find. And so every so often I think about, he's about 89, 90 now. He's probably not teaching, but he has YouTubes. You can check them out for yourself, see if there's something that interests you. But I ended up with Masterson because I read his books and I could understand them, barely. I went to his conferences to understand what was he saying, and they were doing their best to put it in. The conferences were for professionals. So understand, here I was, I had a bachelor, master's, and a PhD in psychology. I was already licensed as a psychologist. I had read a lot of Freud. I had read a lot of people. I had taken lots of courses, and I still found learning personality disorders extraordinarily difficult. Therefore, when I see these people guessing on the internet, arguing with each other about things that they had never studied, I'm kind of horrified, because if I couldn't understand it, I'm a Mensa member. Do I go to meetings? No. But so I know I'm also smart, but this stuff was complicated. And some of the reason it was so complicated was the language. So when I was told this statement about personality disorders and whole object relations, I said, what's whole object relations? I'm interested in people. I'm not interested in objects. And that's what everybody says to me. Why objects? And so I'll tell you first what whole object relations is. It's actually super simple. It's black and white thinking, taken to the max. Right? We've all heard of that. Is no gray, no area in between, no other colors. So it's also splitting. You've heard the term splitting good from bad. So the person sees you as either all good or all bad. That's if you don't have whole object relations. If you don't have whole object relations, you can't see anyone in an integrated, stable, realistic way. And you can't see yourself that way. You see yourself as some version of all good or all bad, depending upon the day, the moment, the time, the feedback, and how damaged you are. Some people see themselves as all bad, and it's pretty stable, and they're harder to help. And some people see themselves as all good. Some people switch back depending on who they're with. So whole object relations is the ability that children normally get by age 5, usually by age 4 often. I watched my grandchild as she was getting it, once I understood what it was. And also object constancy is the ability to see that the person you love and the person you hate sometimes is exactly the same person. And they have both liked and disliked aspects, and you can tolerate their disliked aspects because overall you love them, or they have better aspects that are important to you. So the child before then, if you think back to the descriptions of kids at the terrible twos, you see these kids yelling, having tantrums in the supermarket. I hate you, mommy, buy me candy. I hate you, you're the worst mommy in the world. What's going on? That child, no, that does not have whole object relations. Mommy is all bad because mommy is not buying the child candy, and the child is frustrated and tired and doesn't like to be sitting there in the shopping cart waiting for mommy to pay for things is totally like, do you remember being a kid? I was like bored out of my mind. Bored around adults all the time. It was like the most boring thing. Finally, I learned to read, thank God. And so that same kid goes home and mommy gives him a hug, feeds him, makes nice. Oh, mommy, I love you. You're the best mommy in the whole world. So now mommy is all good. So eventually, somewhere that the terrible twos, it's that switching. You need mommy. You can find a lot of information, formal information about this. Masterson relied to a great extent on a lot of infant theorists. And the one that was testing the idea of borderline personality disorder starts at the age of around 2. And that explains the terrible twos when the child wants to be independent, can speak somewhat, and has preferences, but also wants mommy or the caretaker available when they want to be babied and when they get scared. And that's a big switch. A mommy you've been been a pain to all day at the supermarket and shopping, now you want to cuddle you. Well, back to attunement. A good mother will attune. Now, Margaret Mahler, Pine and Bergman, The Psychological Birth of the Human Infant, dated the borderline, the beginnings of the acquisition of borderline personality disorder between 14 months and about 22 months, 24 months. And that they actually set up a free nursery for mothers with children that age and filmed them, and with the permission. That was with a payback for getting the good nursery. And then they were allowed to use the films for their studies, and it was written up in Mahler, Pine, and Bergman. And they called that subphase when the child is about in that age from 14 months to about 2. Now, again, bear with me, the rapprochement subphase of separation and individuation. Okay?
Mouthful.
A mouthful. So this is why you wonder why we don't have more therapists studying personality disorders. How many of them can say with a straight face the rapprochement subphase of separation and individuation in Margaret Mahler, Pine, and Bergman's system as the precursor to borderline personality disorder? I mean, come on, give me a break.
Impressive. That's very impressive. That is, I must say, I'm impressed.
Thank you. And it's all that confusing. So I took a vow of plain English, and that I would bring this as best I could so that more people. My book was written originally for therapists because I wanted to make it easy for therapists to treat people with personality disorders. I didn't think it had to be this hard. I thought if I gave them what I knew, the basics of what I knew, and good clinical examples in straight English, and then I wrote a glossary for all these awful terms, and I put it at the end of my book, that more people would be willing to and would be effective, would have some understanding of how to diagnose and treat borderline narcissistic and schizoid adaptations. And so I did that, but I found half the people, but I was successful because pretty much everybody who was interested in the topic, whether they were in my field or not, could read the book. And almost everyone told me they could understand it and they could go to my glossary. So I feel that's a success. Now, why am I harping on borderline when I'm talking about schizoid? Well, when does schizoid people are more damaged than borderline people. That's my experience. So to be more damaged than a borderline, if borderline starts around 2.5 and you continue with that family and whatever they were doing that you made a borderline adaptation by 2.5, that's so inconsistent or not attuned to your personal needs. My borderlines mostly have basic trust. They don't always feel unsafe.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we're talking, my estimate, and these are estimates. You can't ask the child, are you making a schizoid adaptation, especially before the age of when they can talk? But it is
Right.
estimated that the schizoid adaptations start before the borderlines.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of controversy over when narcissism starts. Now, can you get a schizoid adaptation later in life as an adult? No, because it has to, these personality disorders by definition start when the personality is forming, and it becomes tangled in with your natural personality. And therefore, it's very hard to untangle. That's what makes the therapy long.